I want to talk about the cinema industry. Um, for my American viewers, I'm talking about movie theaters, but I'm British, as you can see. So I'm talking about the cinema industry and how it may or may not decline. I'm particularly thinking of Netflix, and I want to lay out a few things here. I want to lay out why I'm skeptical of Netflix and why I feel it would be a tragedy if cinemas as a medium for watching films declined or died off. I think it would be an utter tragedy. Um, Firstly, about Netflix. Well, some of this relates to the lockdown that's going on right now. Back in William Shakespeare's day, a lot of theatres actually closed. There's some parallels. Theatres closed because there were periodic plague outbreaks in London. Some of them pretty deadly. Some particularly bad examples, for instance, are the Plague of 1636. Um, the Great Plague, of course, of 1665, but thinking earlier in Shakespeare's day, there was a particularly severe outbreak in 1603 that killed over 10,000 people in London. Another one in 1593. This coincides with Shakespeare's time working at the Globe Theatre. That's why actually the chronology of some of his most famous plays is uncertain because historians aren't quite sure if they were written before or after the theatre closures. But anyway, so there's some echoes of what's happening now with the lockdown. Cinemas are closed. Where I live, Sunderland, in the northeast of England, we have one cinema. It's a big multiplex, Empire Cinema chain. When I first arrived in the city 20 years ago, in the year 2000, Sunderland had no cinema. It was actually one of the largest settlements in the UK. We have a population of about 180,000 people in the city proper, 280,000 in the whole city authority. One of the largest settlements at that time without a cinema. And I remember for about 4 years, from the time I came here to when our cinema opened, the only choice was to go to Newcastle upon Tyne, which has about four or five cinemas, or go to Bolden Colliery, which had a multiplex. And that meant getting a bus journey there, which was never much fun. So I remember in the year 2004 when our Empire Cinema opened, it was a pretty big thing for Sunderland. And it's a pretty good cinema. I have seen some great movies there over the past 16 years. Um, and most of the time that I've went to the cinema, it has been there, with the exceptions of the times that I was in other countries, um, or when I try to think of other occasions. I think I've only been to the Tynemouth Cinema in Newcastle a couple of times, which kind of shows art house independent films, but it's quite pricey. It's a nice feel to it, but it is pretty expensive, and it's known for being pretty expensive. But anyway, I really hope that when this lockdown ends, it won't impact our cinema because it's the only cinema we have. Sunderland's not a big place. It's not like Birmingham or London or Leeds where there's lots of cinemas. We've only got one. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, there's any indication it will close. I'm sure it'll open again as normal, but I really hope it does. And I hope they don't excessively put up prices. There may be a lot of businesses that are tempted to do that to recoup from what they've lost, but if they do it to a really dramatic extent, it will lose customers. And I'm not suggesting they will. I haven't read anything that that's going to happen, but it might. Who knows? Um, Anyway, I've been aware of Netflix for a while. I've seen some Netflix productions. I don't have it, but I've seen Netflix when I was at my brother's house in Surrey. Um, he moves around with his job, but anyway, and I think I've seen it at a friend's house as well. So I'm broadly familiar with the concept. It offers streaming services. They have a selection of films and TV shows. I don't get a good impression from Netflix, and this is why. Firstly, they present themselves as being like the newest form of providing a medium for the film industry. Um, and you know, the PR is all about, oh, enjoy your Netflix experience and so on. Well, I just don't like streaming. I never have. Um, Very occasionally I've downloaded films because there really was no other choice. When I was in China, for example, I showed my students a film for educational purposes. I wasn't just, messing around and showing them a film. It did have an educational purpose. I was asking them questions based on the characters, but I had to download the film there because obviously the laptop I had, I couldn't just bring DVDs there. Now, I appreciate that physical DVDs take up space, and I remember a time actually when videos were the thing, video cassettes. Older millennials like myself still remember video cassettes, and I still have quite a few actually, because I still have a VCR that works. So very occasionally I'll watch them because I just don't have those particular films on DVD yet. And I admit, when DVD first started getting popular in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I was skeptical because perhaps I'm a little bit conservative with change. I sort of thought, oh, it won't be the same. Da, da, da. But I must admit, fairly soon I was converted and I liked the idea of DVDs. Now I have a huge collection, about 800 DVDs, literally. I'll just show you a segment of my collection right there. Those golden ones at the top are all James Bond DVDs, you can see underneath. Um, in fact, I'm in bed, but I'll just show you a little glimpse. Categorize them into like war films, epics, westerns. I have a very, very broad interest range, and I hope that isn't an issue for monetizing. No copyright infringement intended. Anyway, suffice to say, I have a huge DVD collection now. Obviously, that picked up a bit of space, and I guess that is a downside to having physical films like that. And of course, DVDs themselves started to be have competition from Blu-ray. I guess Blu-ray is higher quality. I'm not sure. I don't have a Blu-ray player. I've never watched Blu-ray. Um, what I dislike is the forced conformity of changes in technology. Like, well, it's changing. You just have to accept it. And you just have to convert whatever you have. It's something I've never liked. Um, I like my DVDs, and I don't want to change them. Um, but I also love the feeling of cinema. There's some things I don't love. I don't love selfish people that talk throughout a film. Um, and cinema prices are definitely a point of contention. The prices on the food products is really ridiculous. I think that's something they need to consider if this is going to be a real competition from Netflix. They're going to have to have more realistic prices on their popcorn and their drinks and so on. I understand they're a business; they need to make money, but I think that's something they may need to consider bringing down a little bit. Um, and here's the thing, during the lockdown, a lot of people who have Netflix will be using that more because obviously they're not going to be going to closed cinemas. But for me, streaming as a service will just never have the same appeal as the big screen, as the literally the silver screen, because in the early days they literally put silver into the screen, it was some sort of silver mixture that was used to enhance the screen quality or something. I'm not quite sure. I think that actually put into the film reel. So that expression silver screen is literal. It actually was silver put into the film reels. But I just love that feeling of the big dark room, the big screen, particularly for epics. I mean, a film like Titanic or Gangs of New York, these big sweeping epic films, I don't think you could beat the big screen for that. I mean, Titanic's my favorite film, so that will always appeal to me, whatever format I watch it. But the bigger the screen, the more impressive it's going to be. So I don't see how Netflix can ever really compete with that, particularly for epic films. No matter how good the visual quality is, if it's on a small screen, if you're watching on your laptop or on your television, it just won't have the same feel as the big screen. I just love the idea of going into the cinema and watching trailers. Although recently I have to say I don't like what Empire Cinema's been doing. They've been having like generic television advertisements rather than a lot of people don't like film trailers before the big film. I've never minded that. I've always actually rather enjoyed it. I found it's brought the anticipation of the main film. In the past, of course, it would be film shorts, or in Britain, I believe they even showed footage of the national anthem and the Queen on her horse. Tripping the colour, I think was a thing that was done in this country. But certainly in old British cinema, they used to show like British cafe footage. So it would be little news segments, like a 5-minute news segment on Hitler invades Czechoslovakia, this sort of thing. Um, and then you'd have the big matinee, I should say, film. Um, so something I've noticed recently with cinema, with Empire Cinemas anyway, is they have done this thing where they're showing general ads. And it's just like, I'm not a fan of that. I'm thinking, keep that for television. I don't want to go to the cinema and hear about, Tesco value prices or whatever. I think they should just stick to what they used to do, which was film trailers. Anyway, so there's areas I think cinema can maybe improve, but here's another thing about Netflix. As I understand it, and if I'm mistaken, I'll be happy for anyone to correct me. As I understand it, you pay like a subscription, or like it's a monthly subscription or something, and then you get a range of films and TV shows that you can watch. Now, to me, that's like a mobile phone contract. I've always went for pay as you go because I find it a lot more convenient than kind of a fixed contract where you have to pay up, otherwise you won't get the service. Or it just feels like, if I like a particular film, let's say I've seen it in the cinema, I'll wait until it's released on DVD, brought into HMV, or in some of them we have CEX, which is a discount store. You could get second-hand DVDs. They still work. They're all tested. Um, but the point is, that's your physical property. When you buy it, that's yours. You can watch it as much as you like, as long as you keep it in good condition. It will ostensibly play for many years, maybe even decades, if you look after it enough. I mean, I've got videos that still work okay after 16, 17 years, because I've looked after them. I specifically am careful with how I handle my DVDs and videos. Now, with Netflix, you pay a certain amount and then you get to watch a film, and then that's it. It kind of timed out after, what is it, 6 months? So you can't watch it the following year or whenever you like. You have to watch it within that time frame. To me, that's ridiculous. It's like getting a library book and then there's a due back date. Just to me, that's, I don't want to say pressurizing because it's not like a few days, it is a few months, but I mean, put it this way, the DVDs I have, I've watched all of them a couple of times because they're films that I like. So I know if I watch one tonight, I watched the Italian film Malena. It's a coming of age drama, comedy, with Monica Bellucci. It's on DVD. Now, I've watched it tonight. As long as I still have the DVD and as long as I still have a DVD player, I can watch that 10 years from now. Netflix doesn't give you that option. They have this limit on when you can watch something. So that's a pretty glaring issue to me. Um, I've seen other videos suggesting that Disney may actually be a threat to the film industry because I'm not sure what the logic there is. Like as a franchise, it's buying up other companies. I'm not, no strong views on that. I don't know enough about it. But for me, the issue with Netflix isn't the content. I've seen some good stuff on Netflix. I've just watched, for example, a bit from the film The Outlaw King, which is about the Scottish Wars of Independence. Um, Looks like a good film. It was a good clip of the Battle of Loudon Hill. But now, if I want to watch the whole film, which I do, I'm now intrigued. I can't because I don't have Netflix. And if I want to get Netflix, I have to pay for a subscription, not for one film, but for the whole thing. That's what I dislike. Whereas with that film, if it was just regular, if it was done via, if the distributor was done through cinema, then I could just buy it when it came out on DVD. Someone might even upload it to YouTube. This is what I dislike about Netflix. It just seems to be more restrictive. And I know that a lot of people who have signed up to it have later expressed regrets. So maybe I'm being too critical. Maybe it has some merits. For me, the issue is not the quality. I know some people have criticized the content. From what I see, it has some pretty good content. But for me, it's the method of distribution. Or rather, it's the medium. I do not like the medium. They call me materialistic, but I like physically having something in my hand. It's like books. I'd apply this to books as well. To me, a book is binding. It's paper and ink and the binding. The idea of online books. Um, Again, they may have their usages. There may be some benefits. For example, maybe people who are short-sighted, where you have an audio descriptive book. That I understand, but otherwise, I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I write short stories. I'd love to get published one day. It may be that that's a more marketable option than going to a publisher to get it, printed. And again, I don't want to span out too far here, but again, the print industry needs to consider this. If you look at Waterstones, the prices are extortionate. £25 for a new book, and that's not even a textbook. That's, like a school textbook, which are generally expensive, but that's just ridiculous prices. An online book would be a lot cheaper, but again, I like the physical feel of things. Maybe I'm materialistic in that sense. I don't know, but I like the physical feel of a DVD. I can hold in my hand and take it out and put it into the DVD player. To me, it's just better than streaming something. The streaming might be slow, then you have to pay the subscription. Just don't like the idea of it. Anyway, it's just my opinion. You can disagree. Maybe you've had a different experience, but let me know your thoughts. I'll just close with this. If cinema as a concept dies off, it would be an utter, utter tragedy. An utter tragedy. Um, I mean, in the past, of course, there were more cinemas. In Sunderland, for example, in the 1960s, I think this city, unless I'm mistaken, had about 12 cinemas. In our local museum, you can see this map and you can press the year. So it gives like 1929, 1949, 1969, 1999, and it lights up how many theatres there were, how many cinemas there were. Um, Not 1929, excuse me, 1919. True, there were more cinemas in the past because people had fewer televisions, but to me, cinema's magic. I love it. And I think it would be an utter, utter tragedy if the big screen vanished altogether. An utter tragedy. But someone would then bring it back as a retro thing. It'd be very sad if that happened.